Good afternoon. I'm Sergey Lebet. I'm head of cybersecurity at Sberbank. The subject of my presentation is cybersecurity of digital chaos. In an argument between experts that talk about 100% security, nobody can be right. It's a theme of the past. I don't think professionals would any longer be interested in discussing this. There are two well-known approaches to security. One is requirements-based, and the other approach is based on risk management. We know about vulnerabilities. We know where we're lacking protection that we could afford to have. Let's ask ourselves a question. What happens if risk level or risk volume grows above a certain level and our security systems, our IT systems, turn into a chaos? Chaos being something that we cannot control. Let's talk about some realities in modern companies that see this as a challenge. Digital transformation is a big factor that contributes to economic growth. Many forecasts are based on automation of various workflows. This would require use of many new business models. We're talking about digital platforms, ecosystems, analytics of big data, Industry 4.0, digital 4D printing, IoT, robotics. In Industry 4.0, we are looking at a number of new technologies, systems that operate in the cloud without man playing a role. They create a product and they decide what it takes to make a product, how to interact with this product, what kind of properties need to be changed based on the inputs from consumers, what can be done to improve a product. This philosophy of digitalizing of human life raises a lot of questions related to risk management. However, those are things of the future. Not a very remote future, but still it's a thing of the future. Let us look at the things that many digital organizations are facing today. They are companies that compete in the market, that trying to gain great market share. Many of you work for companies in this market. Let us first look at standards. Are there many? There are areas where there is insufficient regulation. I'm talking about cyber systems, big data. On the other hand, in year 2000, there were only about 2,000 standards in the field of Internet. Today, there are about 8,500. These are standards that regulate Internet, that regulate communication and interaction of devices. That's about 10 or 20% of all standards that deal with interaction between various processes. Cultural transformation, technology availability and readiness are limited by the human resources. People are not ready to embrace these technologies. The engineers are not prepared. There are many reasons for that. A shortage of manpower, rate of change. IT infrastructure is not ready for new technologies. Most organizations have huge pools of legacy systems. There's the shadow internet. Why is this happening? Our IT departments are not prepared to come up with the solutions that would make business people happy. Therefore, our business units are taking responsibility for development of new solutions. They create additional servers to address their business tasks. And it's obvious that this has very bad consequences in terms of security. Security departments are not aware of those additional systems, and that creates huge problems for cybersecurity and for general management of information technologies at a corporate level. Look at the right-hand side of this chart. In 2018, they discovered 16,000 vulnerabilities in all apps. The damage amounted to $4 trillion worldwide. That is the losses that came from cybercrime. 2 million leaks of information. On average, a company needs about 200 days to eliminate a vulnerability that has been identified. Now let us look at the situation from a different angle. Let's look at the traditional model that is focused on a customer. We fight for customers. Customers want it today, very quickly. And they hope that IT departments will provide the best-in-class solutions. IT departments want and try to do what the business is asking, and their main objective is to fulfill those requests and to provide necessary level of reliability. In the end of this path, we see security that is trying to make business department requirements safer and more secure. This is somewhat of a pessimistic picture. Probably these requirements are closer together. When we use a big magnifying glass to look at the situation, we still see the same pattern. This is very typical of a great number of organizations. Let me also point your attention to the fact that everybody has their own objectives. They can be compatible, but not always. Business divisions want it quickly. IT people want it to be reliable, and security people want it to be secure. We need our people to be able to work at all places. They need to have access immediately, access to all kinds of data. And we often forget that this brings about serious risks. I have identified a few trends that have to do with this chaos concept. Let me explain. First, technology leadership. We are going to be pioneers in the market. This means that we need to provide the latest technologies to the business people in our organizations. What is happening in the reality? Most technologies that we deploy, they're new for us. We deploy them without thinking about the landscape, about IT infrastructure, about the legacy systems that we have in place. We don't think how mature this new solution is. What are the consequences? Any new technology that we deploy in this fashion creates infrastructure vulnerability. Data-driven organizations. This is a well-known approach. An organization is looking at data that it accumulates and uses it as a basis for development. We want to become the best people in the market. We want the data to be the main driver in our development. This is what we relay to our customers. We want to have more freedom. That's what business people are telling us, and we give them access to data. We give access to data to those who say that they have the silver bullet to solve all our problems, and in the end, we lose control of data. People compete to get greater market share. We will become the market leader in a new segment. Rapid development of digital technologies will enable us to beat the competition and enter new markets. What is happening in reality? We see more escalations. There's huge pressure from the business people. They keep pushing the IT department, and in the end, this has a negative impact on the quality of IT service. We have more incidents, we have more breakdowns, we have downtime. Services are not available. Now, the next thing, smart manager, new innovation culture. The new digital approach will require new management styles. We are using new language. Well, it's not really new. We keep using those words all the time, DevOps, Agile. But we are not looking beyond those new words. We forget about the old technologies and the benefits that they had. Older technologies gave us more order than the new technologies, even if today's management technologies are better. The rate of change is so high that we have a lot of quality issues. It's difficult to deploy these solutions quickly, and we really end up with a big piece of anarchy. These four trends that I have identified have been pulled together, and altogether, it looks like chaos. That's what I wanted to show you to scare you. Now, let us make some order. It's not quite so bad. And we will start making order from our IT divisions. In this chart, I'm trying to illustrate two ideas. One, cybersecurity cannot be achieved without IT. A very simple statement, but people forget about it. I will come back to it in a few moments. The level of maturity of information security cannot be higher than the level of general IT maturity. You cannot build a good security system in an organization that has poor IT. What is the conclusion from this? Base IT is the foundation for effective management of general information technologies in the company and information security. That is the foundation that we need to rest upon to fight chaos. This is another scary-looking chart. The heart of chaos. It has to do with the previous one. Let me explain what we have here. So we have two basic services without which we can never hope to have any order in an IT organization: asset management and change management. If we do not know what kind of assets we have to protect, if we do not know how they are defined, if we do not know how they are related, then we don't have anything to protect. This is a simple IT service, security service, that often gets overlooked. The requirements for such services, the relevance, comprehensiveness, connectivity, security, and availability are the basis. That is what an organization has to have to avoid chaos. I said not security, not availability, not relevance, not comprehensiveness, and not connectivity. So when we set up a security system and we have this picture, we can say immediately that we have complete chaos because we have undefined assets, we know nothing about them, and we cannot hope to protect the external perimeter because we do not know what infrastructure we've got. Of course, this is not something that happens in real life. One little example. To what extent we can be ignorant about our infrastructure? I will give you an answer to this question later. But now I want to step back and once again show you this chart and point your attention to this CMDB, Configuration Management Database. This is the base IT service. This is the knowledge base that has to be fully aware of all the infrastructure components. That is what I am referring to, this database. What is the level of incompatibility that a digital organization can afford? This is something that I do not have a clear-cut answer for. But let me say this much. One fact, 1% of infrastructure at Sberbank accounts for 5,000 connected devices. Just imagine that there is one process in an organization like Sberbank or Google is infected with WannaCry virus. The consequences will be fatal, even if the volume of vulnerable infrastructure is small. The consequences are still severe. After WannaCry, everybody in the world knows this formula. And in your organizations, you have identified the boundaries that you can afford to counter such an attack. Who has a solution to this set of equations? Well, of course, we have not got a solution for this. In life, this is much simpler.
Because the rate of spread of viruses such as WannaCry is so high, well, the first line just demonstrates that it's beyond the no return, point of no return. The point of no return is a term used by the pilots, aircraft pilots, when they make a decision whether they are supposed to land or take off. So we carried out a laboratory experiment, and it turned out that 25 hosts are infected with viruses similar to WannaCry in 1 second, which means that in reality, the protection systems are incapable of rebuffing these attacks. So that means that we have just a traditional way to restore infrastructure step by step, restoring and resuming the operation system and with the necessary update patches. So what is important to us in this situation? The basic procedures of IT reinstation or cyber resilience. What is cyber resilience? It's a new approach when the primary task is not to make a foolproof, 100% reliable system, but the task is to be resilient, which means to recover as fast as possible after the virus attack. And there's another thing, it's just another funny joke. In case you had no time to update and everything happens like this, so they will have to recover the infrastructure, which will, and in this case, it will take us much longer. So a few more messages that the specialists are aware of, certainly. There is no silver bullet today for security systems. So we see the different stages in the security systems development here. First, the wall building, then the next stage is out-of-the-box solutions, where we buy security means, and the next stage is the risk management. At every stage, we faced certain threats and technical solutions that helped us to combat different threats. The first stage, the firewall, antivirus solutions, which even today are the key solutions, the key elements of any security system. But in the meantime, every year we see new categories, new security media. These are the security systems which were installed by Sberbank at the time, by the way. What is really important to us today is quite obvious that the no silver bullet, and it's quite obvious that IT and security are two twin brothers that have to work together. And it's quite obvious that risk management is the key approach, is the bottom line for any organization, because otherwise the organization won't be able to work normally. By the way, just we tried to calculate all the requirements that are written into the Sberbank standards, and it turned out there are more than 2,000 basic requirements that are actually mandatory that in case of such regulation. So the time factor it becomes really crucial in this. At this point, the ill chain and defense chain, you know, here you can see the defense chain and the attack chain or the hack chain below, the stages they go through when they deal with certain tasks. In the 90s, to disclose and to identify malware, so the time for recovery was about 1 day. It took 1 day to recover from a certain attack. In the 2000s, it took several hours to get back to normal after such a hacker attack. Today, the threats do not reach us, so 2-3 protection walls at the inlet point allow us to say that we are quite well protected. But there is one but. These models are good only for external perimeter. When we are dealing with distributed networks with a lot of mobile gadgets, devices at the disposal of employees, and when errors made by personnel create much more substantial threats, these models do not work. Now, dear colleagues, it's quite obvious then that the world is going further, and globalization brings chaos for IT security specialists, for IT departments, as we see an increasing number of targets that need special protection. Businesses require a certain speed and high rate of any operations, of any transactions. Well, any operation requires a certain description and the resources. So the volume of artifacts provided by modern globalization, the chaos artifacts, creates the problem that I tried to identify in my presentation. But here is my question. Are we capable, taking into account the threats that we are facing today, are we capable to return to order, to make a step from the chaos to order? So how I can answer this question? We have work. If we had no problems, there were no specialists in the security area. And number two, we are supposed to use the same tools that the digital epoch has given us to address our own problems. So it's basically, these methods, these tools, which are demonstrated on this slide. At the core of this is work with data, new management models, security management models on the basis of risk management, and a new thing on the market, such as robotization. Just as exemplified by our Cybersecurity Center, SOC core. Let me explain to you how this robotization works. Well, it's quite obvious that under any infrastructure there will always be certain gaps due to our poor knowledge of certain facilities, certain objects, or to a poor knowledge of external systems or attackers. Also, owing to certain technologies such as external security platforms provided by feeds and different reference system, we can enrich our knowledge of every incident. And in this context, the process robotization technologies do help us a lot, that help us to enrich the incidents. How does it work? Every incident that has been discovered, has been identified by CM system, collects information from internal feeds, allowing the analyst to prepare a report on the basis of 5% of information of such an incident, allows him to add 50, 80 more percent, so as to make the right decision about the coming threat and to identify the way of further processing. Well, of course, these are the systems that are aimed at improving the quality of SIEM systems. First of all, these are the so-called threat intelligence platforms. It's quite an old system that has been on the market for a long time, but it probably has not been tested sufficiently. But with the help of our systems, we've made a study, and we see that they are not ready for our environment. So because they take information from outside and try to apply them to your infrastructure. But in order to apply them, you need to know the infrastructure. In order to know your infrastructure, you must have full information about your MDB system, and also special connectors are needed for your security systems. A very simple example, as we received a hash amount for about the WannaCry virus. So now we have to train our security systems, security media, which in case of identification of such amount on our computer could do the same. So, for example, we can transfer it to Kaspersky, build this into our signature, this new knowledge. It can be done manually, but how can it be done in an automated mode? So obviously we need a connector. So we have such external information about our this threat, we have to integrate it with our firewalls and other systems. But when you have dozens of such systems and you have to do this in real time, there are no available solutions. Therefore, Security Operations Center, SOC, is the center of combating chaos, both in digital organization and in IT. So that's kind of a philosophical slide, philosophical comparison of chaos and order. Let me wrap up my presentation. I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you. Thank you, Sergei Vasilyevich, for an interesting presentation. My question, Andrei Kolokoltsev, Sberbank Insurance. In one of your slides where you mentioned three approaches, first the wall, out-of-box solutions, and risk management, you showed the evolution of these methods. If you can display this slide, please. So my question, well, we understand this is a dynamics reflecting the past and the present, but now it's risk management. So what's going to happen in the future? Thank you for the question. It's the right question. If you could ask me this question before my presentation, I would have probably drawn another slide here. But I do hope that for everyone it is obvious today that the artificial intelligence and the security technologies for large organizations are inalienable systems of protection systems, inalienable safety means, because these modern security systems are engaged in the performance of permanent functions. But there are new problems emerge that these systems cannot deal with so far. Quasi-protection, quasi-problems, behavior analytics, the behavioral analytics, the user's behavior, building profiles, search for anomalies, and the search for deviations, behavioral deviations, so as to conduct the proper analysis. By the way, there are certain solutions available on the market already. So, for example, this is a solution by Cisco company, Salesforce, which can predict user behavior and traffic behavior. So, AI. So there are a lot of other ways to use that, the search procedure. For example, for Sberbank, the Sberbank infrastructure sends 6.5 billion events per day to the Security Operations Center, so that which are fed into the CM system. So the question arises, if we want to build new knowledge and new rules, what kind of tools are we supposed to use in such a huge amount of data? That's where AI comes into play, that helps us to perform a fast search with unstructured data. So the next trend that I would like to identify is biometric solutions. Problem number one is identification, both of employees within systems and our clients. So biometric solutions help us to significantly mitigate the risk of unauthorized access. And number three is the use of new approaches towards security systems. Unfortunately, there is no textbook today which you can open and read the description of the security system, how it can be built, and so on and so forth. Well, we understand there are different methods related to risk and threat analysis, priorities, identification, the rules, structures, individual policies and procedures. They do work even today. But if you look at large digital organizations with a huge number of clients, transactions, and limited resources, we understand that we need new approaches with artificial intelligence, robotization, and new approaches towards management processes. Hopefully, I answered your question. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Sergei Vasilyevich. And talking about your experience in SOC implementation, you mentioned a lot about recommendations and trends and tendencies. So what kind of solutions, well, proceeding from the fact that you've tested different solutions, which solutions you would call inefficient or weak solutions, do not ensuring security, which you would not recommend to use in your current capacity? Well, it's a difficult question indeed. If, well, any means of protection that does not have a well-developed management system, which implies monitoring options as an element of infrastructure, and I mean management in terms of getting expanded analytics and expanding its functionality due to AP. So I would say that such means are not interesting, but so far they are still on the market. They are bound to deal with a certain task, but they look like a brick. Brick, is it a good construction material? It's good for a certain task. It stays in its place, and it can withstand certain pressure and certain load. So if it works, don't touch it, don't move it. But you cannot manage risks. You cannot manage the load, the pressure, because there is no feedback from a brick. So what kind of what is the category of protection? So, well, first of all, we have traditional solutions from legacy systems and also open source systems which have not reached a certain degree of development. But you can't say that this product is good or this bad straight away. I can cite some examples here. In the majority of organizations, the security media are used in only 35% of their maximum efficiency. First of all, because the people do not know their functionality, and their functions are not integrated in the management system. So before you announce a verdict to any security system, please take a look at how it is used by certain organizations. We have Oracle representatives here, but we do not use it to its full extent, because Oracle, it's a good product, but we are not mature enough to say that Oracle is a good product, because we haven't had enough time to pull out all the elements, security elements that are connected with it, because it's rests on a well-protected segment. That's it. But the IT guys are happy. I've just looked at the Oracle people, but you can refer this to any other company, I think. So that's I don't think anyone would doubt that Oracle is the best database in terms of functionality. But to us, it's just a brick. Thank you for the presentation, Konstantin Zaitsev, MIFI. Talking about chaos in large systems such as mega scientific projects where there are new incidents, well, usually we distinguish the managed controllable chaos and non-controllable chaos, which can be modified. So have you managed to subdivide this into different types of chaos? First, we have no chaos. My answer to you. I don't want you to have an impression, or the press would write that there is chaos in these bare bank security systems. Secondly, I can say that it's not easy for us to keep pace and trying to catch all the security systems. But as responsible people, we want to see order. But the IT guys, they're always racing somewhere, they're rushing. So we are trying to catch up with them, and sometimes we just don't have time to use everything. And of course, the security systems is a kind of a tool that is trying to combat chaos. But first, I would like to say no chaos in the bank. Well, of course, we have the graphite rods that we can down into the nuclear reactor so as to launch a non-controllable reaction, But we've mentioned some approaches, some methods today in passing, and I think they should be as a set of tools with any organization. I think we've heard already today in many presentations, and it's a well-known fact that one of the serious risks in cybersecurity are 5G networks, strange as it may seem. On the one hand, it might seem that we had 3G, 2 megabit, and then LTE up to 100 megabit, and now it's up to 1 gigabit 5G. It is really scary. Your entire smartphone may fly up to the cloud. You just won't have enough time to see it reaches the cloud. Everything is going to happen at the speed of light. So we have to increase our feedback and reaction time. And of course, the modern technologies that provide such imbalances and such chaos in our work have to be used in the opposite direction. So, well, probably it was a little bit, I was a little bit sidetracked, but nevertheless, I answered your question. Any other questions, dear colleagues? No questions? Here is a question. GTU. My question is from like a holder of a Sberbank card. So they offer to me biometric solutions. So if they steal a password, it can be recovered. But if they steal my biometric data, what can I do in this case? No, I'm not going to offer this. We are not offering you anything like that, but it's a well-known question, What happens if your biometric data are stolen? Well, the fact is that from the technological viewpoint, your biometric data is a succession of figures. It's just a sequence, digits. So if we assume that somebody has such sequence in the shape of a file, you should create certain conditions so as to pack it into some communication channel, and the recipient is supposed to accept this. But so far today, we haven't heard about any cases when biometric data were stolen or used in some fraud operations or fraud transactions. So although we've heard a lot about this, and no doubt in any biometric system, the most important element is the security of biometric data, which are in digital form and have nothing to do with our voice or face. Well, of course, the facial and voice data are stored there, but the digital footprint in a biometric shape is protected, well protected, and any loss or theft of this image can hardly be used by anyone. But so let's wait for the next precedent when it happens somewhere elsewhere in the world. Dear colleagues, unfortunately, we're running out of time. So if you allow the lady ask another question. No, microphone, please. Microphone. your biometric data, I suppose, are stored in a decentralized or centralized database? Either centralized or decentralized. Well, from the Sberbank's viewpoint, it's in one bank and data processing center. From the data processing center view, several centers. As for hard disk clusters, I can guarantee there are different clusters. But from the viewpoint of the Sberbank security system, I am not going to tell you. Thank you very much for your questions, dear colleagues.